everyone. My name is Reena Sethy, and today we will talk about how you can transform your decision making with SAP Analytics Cloud on mobile. In this slides, I do have some future making statements, and the slides are confidential to SAP, so please don't share without the permission of SAP. As part of the presentation, we will talk about what are the current mobile capabilities as part of SAP Analytics solution. And we will focus on SAP Analytics Cloud mobile application, both on iOS and Android. And I will also tell you how you can use the application to transform your decision-making process with a detailed demo and also followed by a roadmap. If you have any questions, you could surely type it in the chat box. So let's get started with what are the current mobile capability in the SAP Analytics solutions. First and foremost, SAP's strategy is to be an experienced company powered by intelligent enterprise, and analytics is at the heart of it. And SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile enables its users to access the SAP Analytics Cloud content on a mobile device. And so that you can interact and access with stories and digital boardroom presentations from your mobile device. The license of the mobile application is included as part of SAP Analytics Cloud. And as part of Business Objects mobile application, which is for our on-premise Business Objects BI suite of customers, you could use that to access the BI suite content, both on iOS and Android again. And the same ways, the capabilities are included as part of the Business Objects mobile BI solution. For today's presentation, we're going to focus on SAP Analytics Cloud mobile application. So what is SAP Analytics Cloud? SAP Analytics Cloud is a go-forward analytics solution from SAP, and it is an end-to-end cloud solution, providing you business intelligence, predictive, and planning in all one application. It also offers you consumer-grade user experience across devices, right? You could access SAP Analytics Cloud in a mixed environment, whether it's single cloud or multiple cloud. You can also embed the SAC stories and digital boardroom presentations and your designer applications in different SAP and non-SAP applications. You can also embed the multiple smart capabilities that is part of SAC story in your business applications. The goal is to enable users to be able to take smart decisions in the context from the devices. So with that said, now let's look at a little more deeper into SAP Analytics Cloud mobile application. It is available on both iOS and Android devices. It also offers some single sign-on capability to make it seamless access. And we also use the responsive layout concept. That means you build stories once and you can consume it across devices irrespective of the size of the device. You can benefit by just creating once and consume anywhere. There is also native gesture supported, so you could swipe and tap in the mobile application to interact intuitively with the content from the mobile device. Now, we do support all the SAC content, like whether it's digital boardroom presentations or stories or analytics designer application in the iOS mobile app. The Android solution was released this year, and hence you can access stories for now. However, in future, we would also add the digital boardroom presentations and analytics designer applications. Both of these applications do support live and imported data sources, whether it's coming from on-premise data source or from the cloud. As I mentioned, it does use a responsive layout concept so that you can build once and view anywhere. And for a mobile application, it is really important to be very simple to create, simple to consume, and simple to deploy. And hence, with this responsive layout, we have focused on simple to create for the designers. You could, while creating, also look at the device preview, which gives you very close view of how it would be displayed in the mobile device. There are different settings depending on the phone or the tablet. You could change the view and you could get an idea how it would really surface when you're accessing it from a mobile device. There are different lanes in the application. so that if you would like to maybe put few contents together, you would always place them together in a lane. And the lanes that are, depending on the size of the device, the number of lanes is decided. So for instance, let's say on an iPad, you can put maybe 3 lanes, whereas on the phone, it is always one widget after another one. So that is, the application is taking care of it by default. You don't have to do anything additional. Once you create the story in the responsive layout, you can access that story from any mobile device that we support. There are also a lot of pre-designed content that is shipped as part of SAP Analytics Cloud, which helps you to get started really fast. For instance, samples and business content that you can make use of, and you could edit that. You could use your own connections to be able to reuse those content and get started really fast. Now, moving on, let's really understand what are the application requirements and in more detail some of the features. Right? So the iOS application requires you to be at least iOS 13 or above. It is compatible on both iOS, iPhone and iPad. And we do recommend you to have 3 GB of RAM or more. We also recommend you to have a fast processor and a strong Wi-Fi connection, because with that, it also helps to get a better experience while interacting on the application. In terms of the Android application, we have very similar requirements. It requires you to be at least on Android 9 or later. And it does require you to have a device with at least 4 GB of RAM. We recommend you to use, again, with a fast processor and a stronger Wi-Fi connection for better experience. Since this was released in the middle of this year, we require you to have at least SAP Analytics Cloud version 2020-03, and I'm sure that most of you are well beyond that version already. Now let's understand the high-level architecture of both of these applications. So SAC Mobile connects to the SAC tenant and to basically surface the content from the cloud, right? And depending on whether you're using acquired connection or a live connection, it would be either one logon that is happening or 2 logons, right? One would be to the SAC server and the other one would be to the underlying data source. And also the app has an application password, which is an additional security setting that we have provided, so that, you know, if you've misplaced your device or it's in the wrong hands, you still require an additional application password, which is supported with Touch ID or Face ID, depending on the device. And that is an additional setting that is provided as part of the mobile application. Now, on the iOS side of things, it's not really possible for us to kind of share the logon from SAC Mobile to the SAC to the underlying data source, and hence to have seamless single sign-on experience for our users, what we recommend is using SAP Cloud Connector, so that you configure the SAP Cloud Connector with your underlying data source, and like SAP BW and SAP HANA, to have seamless experience, single sign-on experience from the mobile device to the on-premise data source. And this can be also achieved through a few other ways. For instance, you could integrate with the AirWatch SDK in case of iOS. In case of Android, the problem does not exist in sharing the logon between the SAC to the underlying data source. And hence, once you have the X509 certificate on the device and you've set up single sign-on for SAC, you could use the same to connect to the underlying data source. As I said, we support both acquired connection and live. In case of acquired, of course, this is not needed because you're already, the data is already in SAC. Now moving on, we do have SAP Analytics Cloud SDK for the iOS version. Now, why would you need the SDK? Yeah, in few cases where, for instance, you would like to customize your application, maybe to rebrand it or to have different launch icon, things like that. And once you customize it, you would like to roll it out in your internal app store, you would use the SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile SDK. And in some cases also, let's say you have security requirements, which is not part of the default application, for instance, embedding or integrating with the mobile device management browser to do the authentication. In those cases, you would require the SAC Mobile Cloud SDK. And also, as I mentioned, let's say to achieve single sign-on, you don't want to use the SAP Cloud Connector, because in that approach, the data is moving on the cloud. Of course, it's not persisted on the cloud, but then it is moving in the cloud in SAC. And because SAC is kind of acting like a proxy, some customers don't prefer that approach because of that, only that reason. And in those cases, if they are using VMware AirWatch, they can actually integrate the VMware AirWatch SDK with the mobile SDK, and basically include the certificate with the applications. The application can use that certificate while log on and will not require an additional sign-on, right? So that's another way of achieving single sign-on with the VMware AirWatch SDK that we already support. Now, this is on the iOS side of things. For Android, we do plan to release the SDK in our future roadmap. For now, we do have the App Store, the Google Play Store version available for you to use. Now, so far, we have seen the mobile application and its feature functionality, how you deploy it, how you really create content. But let's look at now how you can use some of these powerful capabilities to transform your current decision-making process to the next level, right? And when you do that, let's kind of understand first how the analytics journey itself is evolving, right? More and more, what we see is that there are three paradigms, basically, right? The first paradigm, which is led by IT, the focus was IT persona. They were creating analytics for the users. The second paradigm is where the business analyst is the target persona, and they are really creating and consuming analytics. Now we are in the third paradigm, which is the machine-led BI. That means the machine is proposing analytics or insights to its users with the help of technologies such as machine learning, AI, and natural language processing. The machine is able to provide smart insights to its users to be able to take decisions in the moment where it's important, right? So first and foremost, you need to have a single platform that brings together all the data with all the analytics capabilities needed so that everyone in the organization can take better decisions and act with confidence. When I say bring together all the data does not necessarily mean that you acquire all the data to SAC. It just means that you need to have access to the right data. And that's the first and the foremost, to be able to really take decisions, which is coming from the data. Now, with SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile, you have the option to really converse with your data, to be able to talk with your data, to ask questions in natural language, so that the application is actually, as you type, is able to find a match from the models that are already created and shows you best fit visualizations for you to derive insights. You don't really have to create the visualizations yourself by looking at the data source, by following all the lengthy steps. You can simply type in a query. Let's say you want to understand the revenue for a particular region or for a particular product. All you have to do is just type in that query. And as you type, there will be recommendations from the matches found. So you could select the recommendation that is more appropriate and relevant. And once you hit search, it is just going to create the visualization for you. I do have a demo with more details afterwards, but then to give you more details right now, the cool thing is also being able to interact with that visualization, being able to share with other colleagues and exploring more insights out of it. It also keeps the last 10 queries so that let's say you're traveling and you don't have internet access at all. It doesn't happen way too often these days, but then just in case that happens, you have the last 10 queries in your device cache in the application. So when you open the app and go to search the insight, you can access those last 10 queries, and those could be your favorite queries that you always look for. So you have your insights always with you. And you can even, of course, you can't do a new search because you don't have the connectivity, but then you can have the search results. We will see afterwards a demo. Let's look at another interesting feature, which is what I call as my watch list. This is about personalizing the information, right? Today, there is so much information, so much data available to the users that you can completely get lost and not be able to take or get the right data at the right moment. And to be able to kind of overcome that problem, I would say that this is really interesting because you can start to monitor or track the data that you are interested in rather than go through everything from the beginning all the time. For instance, let's say you have many stories and many stories which is shared with you, or you have created yourself, and but all you care about is probably few subset of the data inside those stories. And rather than every time opening the application, opening that specific story, going to that page, and then opening that visualization, all you need to do is once you just start following that data, the moment you add it to the watch list, it is the application is really going to track that data for you. So every time you open the application, you can also have watch list as your default landing page. So you just go to the default landing page and you have all the data that you've added to the watch list shown to you with the latest values. You can also see if there are thresholds that are created. It will tell you the values of those. In future, we're also looking at integrating with the alerting mechanism. So it is going to send you alerts as well when the threshold is met. Now, with just a couple of taps, you're able to get the data that you want rather than the many clicks that you need to do in the traditional way of accessing your information. So let's really see this in action in the demo from what I have spoken so far. So let's look at the demonstrations.
Let's look at the first demonstration, which is about the search to insight capabilities as part of SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile, which means that you can converse with your data to find insights with natural language queries. As you see, when you open the mobile application, you see the bulb icon in the home screen. And when you tap on that bulb icon, you can initiate the search capabilities using natural language. You can basically start the search with a couple of ways. First is the app would also recommend you with certain queries, or you could simply type in queries with natural language. For instance, I would like to know about, let's say, product revenue. And as I type, I would be prompted with matches found from the dimensions and measures. And I can select the query from the model that I'm looking for. Once you select a particular dimension or the data that you're looking for, it would autocomplete that and you can type ahead with more information that you're looking for. And with the recommendation, it will show you the match of the dimension and measures that lies in your data. So in this case, I'm looking for product revenue lost by material group. Even if there is a spelling mistake, it kind of looks for the correct match found. And the beauty of it is that it also creates the visualization with the matches found and shows you in the results. And you can even interact with the search result on the visualization. You can open it in full screen, or you could even share with your colleagues. So once I open it in full screen, I can interact further and get a detailed view. I can also annotate and share with my colleagues to discuss more about this insight that I have found. Now, this is just a simple search query that I have typed in the application. Of course, you could add the query with multiple things like to find the top products or let's say bottom ranked ones. You can also search queries with time dimension to talk about this quarter revenue or this year or last year for that matter. The app understands all these different queries as well. And by Q1 2021, we're also planning to support this with voice. That means you can really talk with the application through speech, and the speech would be converted into text, and the same search results that you're seeing would then be created, and you could share, annotate, you could do further analysis and related insights as well. Now this is the demonstration one. Now let's look at the second demonstration. The second one is about one of the recent features that we have released as part of the Search to Insight capabilities called the synonym support. As we saw in the first demo, you can simply type in a query and the app finds the match in the data, underlying data from the dimension measures. What if you could search using the terms that is not there as dimension measure, but it is something that you're more familiar with and you use it quite often through something called as synonyms. So the admin can basically store such synonyms in the tenant as synonym definitions. And once the admin stores it as synonym definitions, when you're typing queries and it finds a match, for instance, in this case, you're typing salesperson. Even though salesperson is not really in the data, in fact, it is sales agent, you're able to search using salesperson instead of sales agent. And it also shows you the model that it is finding a match from, so that if there are multiple such matches found from different models, you could select the one that is more appropriate. You could just right swipe and you could see multiple such options provided to the user. So let's proceed. In this case, I would like to go ahead with the first model. And once I search, I'm also shown the result where the salesperson is shown in a different text than the actual measure found. And if I'm unsure, I can even open the chart that is created in the search result and see the synonym definition that is being used in this case, right? The rest of the workflows are very similar. You could open it in full view. You could also share with your colleagues with annotations, and you could interact with the chart. You could compare data. You can do more deep dive analysis. Now, this was about the new feature that we've just added in Q3 as part of the Search to Insight capability. Let's now move on to the third demonstration. In this demonstration, we are going to look at a brand new feature which is still under development and is planned to be released as part of early 2021 called the Watchlist. So far, what we have learned is that there are different ways to access information and insights from the mobile application. You could either access the SAC story or the digital boardroom presentation or the analytics designer applications. You can even search using natural language queries. What if you could just look at the data that you care for the most rather than opening an existing story or artifacts every single time, right? So you can, even though you can mark certain stories as your default landing page, or you could mark it as your favorite artifact. Every time you're accessing it, you're opening it first, you're going to the specific pages, and you're going to that visualization, and you're accessing that information. It is many clicks, right? What if with a single click, you're able to monitor all the data coming from the different stories in one place? What we are going to call as a watch list. So let's look at that in this demo. Since it's still under development, you could, in the final release, the user experience could be a little different. So in this case, I'm looking at my complete list of watch list, which is consisting of the different data coming from different stories and that I care about. I can just do a swipe and get more details about that data. It also gives me more details about what filters have been applied, if there is any variables, prompts, etc. It also gives me information about which model it's based on and helps me to understand better. If there is a threshold, it also shows that information as well. Now, every time I open the application, I can have this as my default landing page, and I can quickly look at all the data that I care about. So how do I really add this data into my watch list, right? So let's look at that. I'm opening a story and I'm going to the visualization from which I would like to add this data. Now let's say I would like to add the manufacturing data, number of employees from this department as part of my watch list. And once I select that data, it gives me this option to add it to the watch list. And I just have to tap on it and it gets selected. And it also prompts me to change the name to something more meaningful if I would like to do that. And it's as simple as that, right? Once you provide a name, you could add that data point, it could start following it. And now the data is added to my watch list. So I don't have to go to that story every time and open that specific visualization. I can just quickly monitor the change in one place. It's going to pull up the latest data in one place. And in future, we're also planning to add the capability to show you the changes over time and also being able to get alert when a particular threshold has been met. Now, let's say you no longer would like to monitor this data. You could also do a multi-select and remove it if that no longer is relevant, or you could continue to monitor in one place, right? Now, this is something which is coming as part of early 2021 in our iOS version. We would also adding these capabilities into the Android in future. So far, we have looked at SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile on the iOS. Now let's look at SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile application for the Android. We released this application in the middle of this year, and it does support SAC stories based on responsive layout. Like in the iOS application, it also has an application password to authenticate you before using the application. Now, for whatever reason, if you would like to disable it, that is possible in the SAC tenant. However, we recommend it to keep it on. In this demo, I will show you the use of device access language and device language for translation for both the application UI and the user input text. Like in the iOS application, Android also has an intuitive home screen to categorize stories based on favorite, featured, and recently accessed content. It also provides a folder navigation. When you open the story, as you see here, you can already see the app UI in the device language setting. And if there is any user input text which is translated, like chart text or page name, etc., that also gets translated.
Okay. So far you saw that in the demo, we could use the watch list. We could also ask questions in the application. And in future, you can even ask through voice, to speech, rather than just typing queries, and many other such capabilities. Now, focusing on the roadmap, what is it that is really exciting and looking forward to. I would always recommend you to go through this link to get more information on the latest roadmap rather than follow static material, because this is the space that always evolving. And as we make more progress, we keep updating this. But just to give you a summary of the roadmap that is future looking, we do plan to focus a lot on bringing insight to action from the mobile device, so that you don't have to really switch devices or come to the desktop to be able to do your work. Looking at SAP Analytics Cloud insights that will be kind of accessed through personalized watchlist or through, let's say, search, whether you do a voice search or a text search, you can get the insight that you're looking for within a couple of seconds. And once you have the insights with you, of course, you can then either explore more by maybe doing more free-form exploration, or you could just share it out, or you could save it as a, let's say, bookmark. Now, all these different capabilities that I just mentioned is basically coming in a future as part of our roadmap in early 2021 for voice to search, and also adding the watch list capability in the mobile application. The text search is already available, and being able to free-form exploration is more towards the later part of 2021. However, you can always do filter, drilling, all those capabilities are already available in the mobile application. We've also followed the same release timeline as SAP Analytics Cloud. So that means we have a quarterly release and a bi-weekly release as well. The other very important aspect of SAP Analytics Cloud Mobile is being enterprise ready, right? So if you see in our roadmap, there is also a lot of focus on being enterprise ready. And when I say enterprise ready, being able to support all the different popular mobile device management capabilities, advanced mobile device management capabilities, more enhanced single sign-on options, and also providing continuous enhancement in terms of performance is our key focus in our roadmap. We also continue to enhance our Android application. For the Android roadmap, if I have to kind of highlight about some of the key things that are coming up, I would name them as the Cloud Path, Cloud Connector based support, which is, even though it is not required for you to do single sign-on, what we've seen, some customers, those who are using it for the iOS application, they would like to use the same for Android as well. And that is planned for our Android enhancements. We also plan to provide the tunnel-based connection for both iOS and Android, and supporting the Microsoft Authenticator MSL-based authentication and Intune SDK is another thing that is planned for our iOS application. The Android application, we also plan to support the Analytics Designer in early or middle of 2021. Now, these are some of the high-level themes of the roadmap. I do recommend you to look at this link. There is also a lot of information available in this TechEd for you to learn more. There are some related topics highlighted here. I would recommend you to go through that. There is also a lot of material to understand about this application. For instance, you can go through these sites. It is also giving you feature metrics on what is supported in the mobile app versus on the web, so that you can take the decision on how to use the mobile application effectively. There is also a lot of learning available in our different channels. I would strongly recommend you to go through these links to understand more. In case there are some questions specific to the session that I presented, you could always reach out through the email that I have here. And thanks for attending this session.